very warm welcome, dear students. Now, I know your exams are just round the corner and you don't have time to go through lengthy videos, but there may be students who have not yet gone through the RTP of May 21 attempt. They don't have a lot of time to go through the RTP, they don't have the time to read everything. So, what I have done is I have converted all these answers into small, manageable notes. You read only these notes and your entire concept will be covered. You can use these notes for last minute revision also. What you need to do is while watching the video, just pause, take down notes in your own handwriting, and you can continue watching the solution. If you're watching my video for the first time, I am CA Preeti Agarwal and I make videos specially for you. Today we have a special solution for students who are looking out for last minute revision of RTP for CA, Inter, Corporate and other laws. For more such concept based videos, do subscribe to your channel Theory Masters Learning. So let us quickly discuss the first question. Students, if you note the RTP, it's quite simple this time. There are no complicated questions involved. Most of the questions which they have covered are theory-based questions. So what I have done is I have prepared handwritten notes so that you can refer to them for last minute revision. So let's get started. The first question of Companies Act is that the Board of Directors of Amit Limited requested the statutory auditor to accept the assignment of. So let us underline the keywords, let us highlight them so that we can frame the answer accordingly. The Board of Directors requested the statutory auditors to accept the assignment of designing and implementing of suitable financial information system to strengthen the internal control mechanism of the company. Now, this will actually give you a hint. The entire question is based on this. Students, you will be surprised to know that the answer is hidden in the question itself. What you need to do is just find out keywords that will lead you to the correct answer. How will you approach to this proposal as a statutory auditor of Amit Limited, taking into account the consequences, if any, of accepting this proposal? So I have framed a model answer for you. These are my handwritten notes. Now there are certain services which a statutory auditor cannot provide. See, you cannot design the system and audit it as well. You cannot prepare the financial statements and then audit that. So there are certain services which a statutory auditor cannot provide. So let us go through those services which cannot be rendered by auditors. This is covered under section 144. Now students, section 144 is important for exam. You need to memorize this section number as well as the provisions as it is. So to help you remember the provisions, I have created a mnemonic. It is Ramada, the hotel. Yes, so easy to remember. Ramada and 3 I's. Okay, so R means a statutory auditor cannot be engaged in rendering of outsourced financial services. A stands for he cannot render any other kind of services. Now see, this is a note for you to remember. Okay, while writing in the exam, A can be written last also. He cannot provide management services, accounting and bookkeeping services, design and implementation of any financial information system. A, he cannot provide actuarial services. So you can note down this mnemonic Ramada. 3 I's include he cannot provide internal audit, he cannot provide investment advisory services and investment banking services. Now in the concerned question, they are asking the statutory auditors to be engaged or to escape the assignment of designing and implementing of suitable financial information system to strengthen the internal control. If you notice, the D part, that is design and implementation of any financial information system, is a service which cannot be rendered by an auditor. So in this case, in the first paragraph, I've also mentioned how you will frame the answer. Okay, so in the first paragraph, you will write only the theory which you can see on the screen. See students, it is not just important for us to know the content, but presentation is also important. So how will you present this answer? You need to write everything. Now see, if it is a 4-mark question, they are actually not expecting you to write everything. But if you know the provisions, then why not show the examiner that I am aware of the services that cannot be rendered by the auditor. So you write down everything. In the first paragraph, you will write the section number and the theory. You will discuss the question. After writing all this, then you will discuss the question that he was, approached for in framing the internal control system. So in this case, our answer will be no, this is a service which cannot be rendered by the auditor. Then in the second paragraph, after discussing the question, you will arrive at the solution that you cannot perform the mentioned services. Acceptance, if you do accept to perform these services, they will attract penal provisions under section 147. In the model answer to the RTP, they have not gone to discuss section 147. They have not given the provisions of 147. So in the exam, you can also just write, it will attract penal provisions, write down the section number and proceed. Lastly, you will write conclusion that these are services which cannot be provided by an auditor. So that was the first question. Now students, I'll just show this note to you completely and I'll just zoom in. Yes, so this is the entire note. You can copy this in your notebook. Just pause the video and write this in your notebook. This will help you a lot during last minute revision. So pause the video, write this in your notebook. Don't take a screenshot, that is not going to help you. Write it in your notebook. That will help you to remember this till the exam. So I hope you paused the video. I'm not going to wait for a long time. That's a very simple step now. Okay, let's go to the second question. The income tax authorities in the current financial year 1920 observed that during the assessment proceedings a need to reopen the accounts of Q Limited for the financial year 8-9. Oh God. They are in the year 1920 and they want to recast the accounts of 2008 and 9. That's a long gap. Therefore, they filed an application before the NCLT. Now, the first thing that should come to your mind, are they authorized to apply for reopening of the books of accounts? Okay, so that is the first thing which should come in your mind. Then the years have been given, so it means it has some relevance while framing the answer. Okay, so your answer, see how I'm framing my answer in my mind. The first thing that I will consider is, are they authorized? Second is, the years have been given, there is some relevance. They file an application before the NCLT for reopening of the accounts, recasting of the financial statements. Examine the validity of the application filed by the income tax authority to NCLT. Immediately it should cross your mind that they are talking about section 130. It's a direct question. Reopening of account on courts or tribunals order. Now the entire section has been covered in a very simple and easy manner for you. So I have prepared a chart. The main aim of this video is to give you handwritten notes for last minute revision, okay, so that those students who have not yet gone through the RTP and don't want to go through lengthy videos can just write down these notes, go through them one day before the exam, and they are sorted. Okay, now as per section 130 of the Companies Act, a company shall not reopen its books of accounts, they will not recast the financial statements unless an application is made in this regard by, okay, so you cannot ask for reopening, recasting unless an application is made by either the central government or the income tax authorities, SEBI, or any other statutory regulatory body, authority, or any person concerned. So those 4 points have been covered over here. Now, the income tax authority, in my question, they are authorized to ask for reopening, recasting of the financial statements. So that is something which you will write in the answer. You will mention this in the answer that yes, they are authorized. Now, an order can be made by the court or tribunal to the effect that, so they have received the request from these authorities. So an order can be made by the court or the tribunal, whoever has received the request, that the relevant earlier accounts, the ones that we are asking to be reopened or recast, they were prepared in a fraudulent manner. Okay, so we are informing them that yes, it was made in a fraudulent manner, or the affairs of the company were mismanaged during the relevant period, therefore casting a doubt on the reliability of the financial statement. So students, this is something which should be mentioned. I'll just zoom in a little so that yes, now you can read everything on one screen. So over here, yes, these persons can make an application. An order is made by the court or the competent authority to the tribunal that we are of the opinion the relevant earlier accounts were prepared in a fraudulent manner or the affairs were mismanaged. Now, I have highlighted a few words over here. These words have to be present in your answer. These are key words. They have to be present. Then these words will carry marks. They will help you to remember the provisions. So the affairs were mismanaged and they are casting a doubt on the reliability. So therefore, we are requesting for recasting. But, there is a note which I have mentioned. No order shall be made in respect of the reopening of books of accounts relating to a period earlier than 8 financial years. Okay, so you can order for reopening, recasting on the financial statements, but not for statements which are older than 8 years. Now, in the current year, that is 1920, we are making a request to the tribunal for reopening, recasting of the books. If you go 8 years down the line, the maximum that we reach is 2011-10. But they are requesting for opening or reopening of the books of account. Okay, it is for the financial year 2008-9. So in this case, your solution should be, first, you will write down the provisions of section 130. So please pause the video, write this in your notebook, section 130. You will have to also write the note which I have written that you cannot reopen or recast the books which are older than 8 years. After writing that, you will then arrive at the solution. That in this case, the application for refiling, reopening of the financials or recasting of the financials was required for 2008-9, which is beyond 8 years. Therefore, even though the income tax authority, just as I pointed out earlier, they are authorized, okay, they can make a request for reopening, recasting, but not for a period which is earlier than 8 years. Okay, so you will write this entire theory. After writing this and the note, no need to show this type of calculation, this is only for your understanding. Then you will write that although the income tax authority is authorized, they cannot ask us to reopen, recast the financials which are older than 8 years. So over here, they will not be allowed to reopen or recast the book. All right. So this is something which you will write. Now pause the video and write this. Done. I hope you have written. You can write the note also. See, we are preparing last minute revision notes. Done. Very good, students. Now, the third question, okay, this is for the fourth question. Now, the third question, I have solved it over here only. It's a very small question, very basic question. This is the solution. Okay. Let us read the question first. Mr. Bindra is holding 950 equity shares of the company. It's a Section 8 company. BioSafe Herbals is planning to declare dividend in the annual general meeting for the financial year ended on 31st March 2020. Examine whether the act of the company is in order. Now, it's a Section 8 company. The characteristics of section, I'll just enlarge the screen for you. Okay, this was hidden. All right. I hope you can see it now. Just adjust the screen a little. Okay. Now, what are the three key points, key features of Section 8 company? The first feature is that it is formed for promoting certain objects like promotion of art, science, culture, commerce, science, education, welfare of the environment. Okay. So these are the purposes for which Section 8 company is incorporated. It intends to apply profits only for promoting the object. See, it's a non-profit organization doesn't mean that it doesn't earn profit. It does earn profit, but they cannot use this profit for any purpose other than promoting the objects for which they have been incorporated. The third point is very important for us. It prohibits declaration of dividend to members. So you cannot utilize this profit for declaration of dividend to members. But here, what are they doing? They want to declare dividend. Is the action in order? No, no, no. You cannot declare dividend. You are a Section 8 company. Kiara, the holder of 5,000 equity shares, I'll just zoom in again. She is the holder of 5,000 equity shares. I hope it is clearly visible. Of 100 rupees each of Kanpur students. This is an important question and it can be asked in the exam. So please mark it as important for exam, can be expected. Kiara, the holder of 5,000 equity shares of 100 rupees of Kanpur Leather Shoes Limited, did not pay the final call of 10 rupees per share. Kanpur Leather Shoes declared a dividend at the rate of 10%. Examined with reference to the provisions of the Companies Act, the amount of dividend that Kiara should receive. So ideally speaking, if she is the holder of 5,000 equity shares of 100 rupees each, so it means that she is holding shares of rupees 5 lakhs. On that, if you calculate 10% dividend, it comes to 50,000 rupees. Okay, I have shown the calculation here. So 5,000 dividend on 10% dividend on 5 lakh comes to 50,000 rupees. Now, the calls in arrears, okay, I think it's slightly hidden. Okay, I can't scroll down. Now, the calls in arrears amount to 10 rupees per share into 5,000 shares, that comes to 50,000 rupees. So now we need to pay dividend 50,000 and we also need to receive the last call money of 50,000. So law says that there is no offense by the directors if they have adjusted the calls in arrears against the dividend. So over here you can show the calculation, although in the model answer they have shown the calculation briefly. So over here, as per the provisions of section 127, no offense is committed by the directors for adjusting the calls against the unpaid dividend. You can definitely adjust the call against the dividend. They have also shown the calculation in this manner. Next, let us read the fourth question. A general meeting was scheduled to be held on 15th of August 2019 at 3 p.m. As per the notice, the members who were unable to attend the meeting, they could appoint a proxy. The proxy form should be lodged at least 48 hours before the meeting. X, a member, appoints Y as his proxy. Now, students, let me show you the note while we read, because I have converted that entire question in this manner. So we are studying section 105 proxy. Now this is the question which I have converted in a tabular form. Okay, let us read. The meeting was to be held on 15th of April. So I have written that the meeting is to be held on 15th of April 2019 at 3 p.m. X is a member and he has appointed Y as a proxy. The date on which the proxy is lodged is 10th of April. Sorry, that is the date on which the proxy form is filled and it is lodged on 11th of April. W, another member of the company, he also appoints two persons, that is M and N, as proxies. The proxy of M is dated 12th April and it is lodged with the company on 12th April itself. The proxy in favor of N is dated 12th April and it is lodged on 14th of April. Now, as per the provisions of the Act, the proxy should be lodged at least 48 hours before the meeting or any shorter notice as may be provided in the articles. All right, so I don't think there is any shorter notice which the articles have provided. According to the articles, the notice must be lodged at least 48 hours before the meeting. So in this case, students, I have written something about proxy. You need to write this in the exam also, because you cannot just start writing the provision, writing the solution. You have to give some provision at least. The instrument, that is the proxy form, must be in writing. Writing is the key word. It has to be present in your answer. You have to write the word writing in the answer. So instrument must be in writing. It is nothing but an authority or authorization given to another person to attend the meeting and to vote on behalf of the member. So if you are not able to attend the meeting, you can send someone else. Proxy need not be a member except in case of Section 8 company. Proxy must be deposited, it must be lodged, it must be given to the company at least 48 hours before the meeting or any such shorter notice as given in the articles. Can we appoint more than one proxy? Maybe yes, because what if the first proxy does not turn up or he is unable to attend the meeting? At least we can send the second person. So what if we appoint more than one proxy? Then in that case, the proxy appointed later in time shall prevail. Now, proxy is a term which is used not only for the form, but also for the person. So the one appointed later in time will prevail. The earlier one is automatically revoked. What if the member who has appointed proxy personally attends the meeting and he also votes at the meeting? Then the members' vote will be considered. Proxy's vote is automatically revoked. Proxy is revoked. You can't vote. Now over here, the date of the meeting is 15th April. They are asking what is the position of the proxy appointed by X and W. Let's take it one at a time. In case of X, he has appointed Y as a proxy. The date on the form is 10th April. That's not relevant, but yes, it was lodged on 11th April. Now it has to be lodged 48 hours, means 2 days before the meeting. Now here it is lodged well in time, so the proxy in favor of Y is valid. What about W? Now W has issued proxy in favor of two persons. M is dated 12th April and it is lodged, it is submitted to the company also on 12th April. Whereas the proxy in favor of N is dated 12th, but it is lodged on 14th. Now, if I apply the provisions which you can see earlier, like the above bullet point, if we appoint more than one proxy, the one appointed later in time shall prevail. Over here, can we consider N's proxy as valid? Because the one appointed later in time should prevail, right? But what if we consider that as valid? Will it be right? No, because it is lodged just one day before the meeting, whereas it should be lodged at least 48 hours, 2 days before the meeting. So even though N is appointed later in time, his proxy will not be considered valid because it is not lodged 48 hours before the meeting. In fact, M's proxy will be valid. He will be allowed to attend the meeting and vote at the meeting. So that is the conclusion which you will arrive at. Students, I'll just show this on one screen so that you can pause the video, write this in a very systematic manner. This is your first paragraph, the theory, the entire theory, whatever bullet point you are seeing, that is the first paragraph of your answer, theory section number. In the second paragraph, start explaining the question. The meeting is on 15, then proxies, they are appointed. You can show in this format. It's not an issue. Answer should be correct. That's it. Pause and write this. Done. Okay, let us proceed. Shiva Cement Limited is engaged in the manufacturing of different types of cement. It has got a good brand value. Over the years, it has built good reputation and the balance sheet is given to you. Authorized capital is given. Okay, issued, subscribed, paid up is also mentioned. Free reserves are given. Now, the board of directors, they are proposing to declare a bonus of 1 share for every 2 shares held by the shareholders. The board wants to know the condition and manner of issuing bonus shares. It's a pure theory question, so I have not prepared a note for that because I think it's a very simple and straightforward question. You will always mention the sources of funds. Okay, students, please note whenever a question on bonus buyback is asked, please mention the sources. So we can utilize the free reserve, securities premium, capital redemption reserve. That is actually one use of CRR to issue fully paid up bonus shares. But yes, while calculating this profit, we will not include revaluation, the profit earned from revaluation of asset, because that is not a free reserve. It's not an actual reserve also. Conditions for the issue of bonus shares. It has to be authorized by the articles. It is allowed by, it should be recommended by the board, and an ordinary resolution is to be passed in the general meeting of the members. The company should not have defaulted in repayment of fixed deposit, debt securities, statutory dues of employees like provident fund, gratuity, bonus. Partly paid up shares, they should be made fully paid up, and bonus once declared cannot be taken back. You cannot just give happiness to the shareholders and then take it away from them. Yes. Okay, now in this case, what is the use of the paid up share capital details which are given to you? It is just to keep a check whether the bonus which they are planning is within the limits or not. Now, see, the paid up share capital is 1 crore rupees. They are giving one share for every two shares held. It means they are issuing 50% of this capital as bonus. So they are planning to issue 50 lakh of bonus shares. So they have mentioned that they will require reserve of 50 lakhs. The company has reserves of 3 crores, which is sufficient. This is the only calculation which is expected from you. The majority of marks will be given and allotted to the theory. But yes, since numbers are given, you need to use those numbers. You need to show how they have, how whether the bonus is within the limits or not, whether they can issue bonus in the ratio 1:2. So our conclusion will be yes, they have sufficient reserves, so they can issue bonus. Now you need not write this, you can just pause, but it's given in the question. Okay, let's go to the sixth question now. Pristine Limited, a listed public company, conducted its annual general meeting on 31st of August 2020. Okay, I have a note for that also. I have converted the entire section into a very manageable note. It's just one page note. Yes. So over here, the company is a listed public company. Students, this is something which you will use in the answer. It's a listed public company. Everything depends on this. Whether the section applies or not depends on these words. They conducted the annual general meeting on 31st August 2020. 10 days have passed since 31st August, but it has not filed a report on the annual general meeting. The accountant of the company has approached you to advise them whether the company is required to file a report on the annual general meeting. Basically, a report is to be filed confirming that yes, we have conducted the annual general meeting, it has been convened, held, conducted as per the provisions of the Companies Act. It is just giving them information that we have conducted the AGM. So I'm asking questions and the answers, those are the provisions of the section. So report on annual general meeting, section 121, please mark this as important and according to me expected in exam, according to me. Okay, please mark this as important and expected in exam. So report on AGM. Who needs to submit a report on AGM? It applies to listed public company. Yes, this is a listed public company. Okay, let's proceed further. If it applies, then how will they inform? How will they submit this report? Just keep on asking yourself questions, and the answers that you get are the provisions that you are expected to write in the exam. So it applies to listed public companies. Okay, so then this section applies. We can continue writing our answer. Otherwise, it will end over here only. So the company will prepare a report in form MGT 15 on each AGM. Okay, so they need to file it every year. Why? So that they confirm that the meeting was held as per the provision. It was held and conducted as per the provisions of the Companies Act. When do we need to file it? We need to file it with the ROC within 30 days of the AGM with prescribed fees. Okay. What if we default? There is penalty. In the model answer, if you see, students, they have not explained the penalty. They have just mentioned that you will be subjected to penalty. So this implies that institute is not expecting you to remember all the penalties. They have also not written in the RTP, but I have written it in a very simple manner, so it is easy for you to remember. The company will be liable to will be punishable with penalty of rupees 1 lakh for the penalty. So they have to pay 1 lakh rupees, but for the penalty of 500 rupees per day for continuing default, maximum it is subject to 5 lakhs. Officer in default will have to pay minimum 25,000 plus a further penalty of 500 for each day of continuing default, if there is a continuing default, subject to maximum of rupees 1 lakh. Now, the report has to be filed with ROC within 30 days of AGM. So we are just advising the company that your meeting was on 31st of August. Within 30 days, that is by 30th of September, you need to file the report on annual general meeting. Now, students, I have zoomed in a little. This is the entire note which will help you to solve the question. It is a last minute revision note. So please copy this in your notebook. Just pause the video. This is the full screen. So please pause the video and write this in your notebook. Done. All right. I hope you paused the video. Don't take a screenshot. That is just a short-term solution. You will not be able to remember that in the exam. Next question. Kia Limited issues 1 lakh shares securities of the company. The company decides to publish an advertisement in the prospectus. Do I really need to discuss this? Enumerate to the company about the necessary contents of the memorandum of association. I'm just reading it, students. I don't think I need to even discuss these provisions. It's a straightforward answer. Just remember what needs to be disclosed. The last question, where is it? Yes. This is a favorite question of the institute. They ask it very frequently. It's there in the MCQ type question also. Yes. Nadeem incorporated a one-person company, making his sister Nisha the nominee. Okay, so I have a small note for this. So she is the nominee. Nisha is leaving India permanently due to her marriage abroad. Due to this fact, she is withdrawing her consent of nomination in the said one-person company. Taking into consideration the provisions of the Companies Act, answer the questions given below. If Nisha is leaving the country permanently, is it mandatory for her to withdraw nomination in a one-person company? Students, the eligibility of member as well as nominee is that you must be a natural person, you must be an Indian citizen and resident in India. Resident means you should stay in India for at least 182 days during the preceding one financial year. If she is leaving India permanently, it means she is not going to be present in India. All these three requirements are cumulative. It means all have to be satisfied. Now, she is no longer a resident in India. So in that case, yes, she will have to withdraw her consent to act as a nominee. We will appoint someone else. If Nisha maintained the status of resident of India after her marriage, it means she was in India for at least 182 days during the immediate preceding financial year. Then can she continue her nomination? Answer is yes. In that case, if she is satisfying all these three criterias, then yes, she can continue to remain the nominee. So what is expected out of us? What should we write in the model answer? You will write these provisions. What is the eligibility of member as well as nominee? Okay, after writing that, just explain these two situations. Maximum weightage that they can give to this question is 4 marks. So you can expect 1 or 2 marks according to me for the theory, and 1 mark for applying that theory to these two sub questions. Now let us go through the theory questions. Okay, the first question. Now the question is on the top of the screen, and the handwritten notes which you will refer first, then you will pause the video and write it in your notebook. Let us read the question. Now, the first question relates to the Indian Contract Act 1872. I will read the question first, then we will discuss its concept. Akash is a famous manufacturer of leather goods. He appoints Prashant as his agent. Okay. Now we will highlight the keywords as we read, and you pay attention to how we are identifying the keywords. Prashant is entrusted with the work of recovering money from various traders to whom Akash sells leather goods. Now, before you proceed, always identify the parties. Be it whichever unit or chapter that you're studying, always identify the parties. Akash appoints Prashant as agent. So write that Akash is principal. Always identify the parties first. And Prashant is the agent. All right, now we will proceed with the reading. Prashant is paid a monthly remuneration of 15,000. Okay. Prashant during the month recovers 40,000 from traders on account of Akash. So it means that the agent is acting on behalf of the principal. That is what he's supposed to do. Prashant gives back only 25,000 to Akash. It means that out of the 40,000 that he has recovered from the customers, okay, out of the 40,000 that he has recovered, he pays only 25,000 to the principal. This 15,000 he has retained for his remuneration. Examine with the relevant provisions of the act whether the act of Prashant is valid. What do you think, students? From the money that the agent has received from the principal, can he retain, can he keep his remuneration and return and give the principal only the balance amount? He can do so, right? Now, the theory that relates to this particular question is given under section 217. Now, it's okay if you don't remember the section number, but it is our duty to inform you and it is your duty to learn it. But even in the exam, if you don't write it, you will not, lose drastic marks. But try to remember. Now, in order to help you to remember the section numbers, I am leaving a link in the description box where I have a list of all the section numbers. So there is a PDF which you can download. You will find a list of all the section numbers in that, and I've also highlighted in purple the sections which I feel are important. So even if you remember only those section numbers, it is sufficient. Okay, so please go through the link in the description box. Now, section 217, the right to retain out of the sums received on principal's account. So if you have received some money on the account of principal, you can retain certain things. For what you can retain? The agent, if he receives money on account of the principal, see students how I have made notes. If he receives money on account of the principal, then he can retain all the monies that are due to himself in respect of the advances made, okay, in respect of the expenses that he has incurred for the business, and such remuneration as may be payable to him for acting as an agent. So for what can he retain? He can retain for whatever expenses that he has incurred for the business. He can retain if he has given some advance to some other person to keep the goods, or to some supplier to retain the order. So in that case, he can retain from the money that he has received for the principal, and he can also retain the remuneration. Section 217. This right can be exercised on any sum received on account of the principal in respect of business of the agency. So whatever money he receives for the principal, from that he can retain money, advances, expenses, and remuneration. So yes, the action of the agent is appropriate. He can retain. Now students, please pay attention. In the model answer, okay, in the model answer of this question, please note, they have discussed agency coupled with interest. Section 202. I feel that the answer is wrong. The model answer given in the RTP is not appropriate. Why? There is no coupled with interest. What is the agency, irrevocable agency, when it is coupled with interest? Coupled with interest will apply only when the agency is created to protect the interest of the agent. I don't think that 202 coupled with interest, irrevocable agency is applicable over here. So I feel that the answer given in the model answers for question 9 is wrong. It should be section 217. All right, students. Now, I'll just show the note to you. You can pause the video and write this in your notebook. This covers the entire section. And this is the answer. Done? Okay. Let us proceed to the next question. That is question 10. It relates to Negotiable Instruments Act. I'll just go to the question. Okay. One very, very simple question. I don't think these questions will be asked in the exam. Okay. Calculate the date of maturity of a bill of exchange drawn on 1st June 2019 payable 120 days after considering the relevant provisions of the Negotiable Instruments Act. 12th standard question. I don't think this will be asked in the exam, but anyways, they have given it in the RTP, so we will discuss it. Now, students, the bill, it's very simple. Why am I even discussing it? Sometimes I feel that. Okay, the bill is drawn on 1st June. It is for 120 days. Okay, I won't show you the answer. Why don't you first take a minute and try to compute the date of maturity? Just pause the video, students. Just pause the video. Try to solve this question on your own. Try to find out the date of maturity. Take 2 minutes and do it on your own. Why should I give you the answer ready-made? Why don't you try it? Okay, so pause the video and tell me. I'm waiting. Okay, I hope you paused the video because I can't wait for long. Okay, I'm assuming that you have got the answer. Okay, now, what is the answer? What is the date of maturity? Did you get, initially, did you get 2nd October? Now, can the bill maturity be, can it fall on a public holiday? No, right? Then what will you do? Preceding, absolutely right. Brilliant. 12th standard hai ye to. So in this case, let me show you the calculation. The bill is drawn on 1st June. Now, students, please note there is no correct way of presenting it. Every way is correct. Okay. So you can show the calculation in any manner that you want, paragraph form or in this manner. You can show it anyhow. Answer should be correct. Provisions should be correct. Now, the bill is drawn on 1st June. It is payable 120 days after sight. So the first day, that is on 1st June, that will not be included. So remaining 29 days of June, 31 days of July, 31 days of August, 29 days of September, that comes to 120 days. Okay. We also add 3 days of grace. So that will bring us to 2nd October, but it's a public holiday, Gandhi Jayanti. So if the date of maturity, if the due date falls on a public holiday, then we will take one immediately preceding business day. Okay, immediately preceding business day. Preceding means one day before. Now, students, please note in the model answer, again, I feel that this is an error, although the meaning is not changing a lot. What have they written in the model answer? It will fall due on 1st October, the next preceding business day. What is next preceding? Next preceding? How can that be? Next preceding? I don't know. I don't think that is correct. So according to me, instead of next, please write immediately preceding. Okay, so I feel next preceding doesn't make sense, no? So immediately preceding. I think that is better. All right. So that was the first question of the Negotiable Instruments Act. Let us go through the second question from the Negotiable Instruments Act. That is also a very simple question. In fact, this question has been asked in the past exams. I think twice, yes, 2 or 3 times it has been asked in the exam. Now, students, if you want to all the past exam questions, MTP, RTP questions compiled in one place, then you can go for the compiler, which is available on my website. Link is in the description box. Okay, Negotiable Instruments Act, the second question. Chandra issues a check for rupees 50,000 in favor of Day. Chandra has sufficient amount in his account with the bank. The check was not presented within reasonable time. That is your hint. The check was not presented within reasonable time to the bank for payment. Bank in the meantime became bankrupt. Section number. I want you to recollect the section number. If you don't remember, go and see in your notes, in the module, whatever book that you are referring. This is the only way in which you will be able to memorize that section number. Okay, go check it in your notes. If you remember, excellent. Do you remember the section number? Don't feel tensed if you don't remember, but go and check it in your book. What is it? What did you get? Should I wait? Okay, this is like a conversation now that I'm having with you. Okay, what is it? Section number 84. Brilliant, excellent, very good students. You found it or you remember it. I'm amazed. Super. So in this case, the check was not presented within the reasonable time and bank became bankrupt. Now, what will you write in the answer? How will you frame it? Now, the check was not presented. We will, of course, write down the provisions of section 84. In that, you have to concentrate on the fact that he had sufficient amount in his account with the bank. Check was not presented within reasonable time. Students, you have to explain what is reasonable time in your answer. Okay, I've highlighted that. I've tried to highlight it in bold, just putting a star also near it. You have to mention what is reasonable time. Okay, can he recover the amount from Chandra? This is the third thing that you need to answer. So there are three things which you will write, on which you will concentrate in your answer. I will also highlight, can they recover, what is reasonable time, and he has sufficient amount. So it means that it was not presented to the bank on time. Let us see what go through the notes that I have made for this particular section. Section 84, when the check is not duly presented, drawer is damaged thereby. Here the damage should be actual damage. Okay, actual damage. Now, the check must be presented within reasonable time. This is a normal sentence. Okay, this is the ideal scenario. Check must be presented within reasonable time. What if it is not presented? That is your next question. See, I told you I will show you how to link. You just remember check must be presented within reasonable time. Then you ask your mind, what if it is not presented within reasonable time? That is your next sentence. That is your next point. If it is not presented within reasonable time and the drawer suffers actual damage, what damage does he suffer? See, when he had issued the check, that time there was sufficient money in his account. But the payee, he did not present, the creditor did not present the check to the bank. If he would have presented the check to the bank, he would have got money. And in my books, he would no longer remain a creditor. Now he has not presented the check to the bank. If the drawer suffers some actual damage, because the bank failed, bank became bankrupt. Now in this case, it is not the fault of the drawer. He had given the check and he also had sufficient money in his account. So in this case, now he has suffered damage, bank has become bankrupt. From where will he pay the money? The drawer is discharged to the extent of actual damage. Now let's say, for example, that the drawer had to pay 70,000. He paid a check of 50,000. So now he is discharged to the extent of 50,000 if that is the actual damage. Okay. Next, you have to explain what is reasonable time. Check must be presented within reasonable time. What is reasonable? Well, that depends upon the nature of the instrument. Like check, it should be presented within 3 months. Earlier it was 6, now it is 3 months. It depends on the usage of trade custom. Sometimes the instruments are, their validity depends on the trade custom, if at all it does. And the usage of the bankers, the facts of the case. So reasonable time means all this. Now, the first thing that we wanted to answer are the provisions of section 84, which I already did. Okay, so I stated the provisions of section 84. Then we also discussed what is reasonable time. That was the second thing on which I had to answer. So I answered considering what is reasonable time. The third thing that the question asks, can the creditor, can they recover money from Chandra? That is the third thing which you need to answer. No, in this case, he cannot recover anything from Chandra. He can, however, recover the amount from the bank. So drawer is discharged to the extent of whatever damage that he has suffered. He is discharged. The holder, that is creditor, is now the creditor of the bank. He is no longer creditor of the drawer. He becomes creditor of the bank, and now he can recover money from the bank. So students, these are the provisions that you will write. I'll just show it to you so that you can make a note of it in your notebook. Section 84, give the heading as section 84. Done. Okay. So this is the last line. Please pause the video, write this in your notebook. Okay. Let us proceed to the next question. I have answered that in the paper itself. Let us read that question. It relates to the General Clauses Act now. I'll just open that question. Yes. Mr. Apar and Mr. New both are aspiring chartered accountants, and they have met in a conference for CA students. Both have an argument about the meaning of the financial year. They have approached you as a senior in the profession to guide them about the meaning of the financial year as per the provisions of the General Clauses Act, and what is the difference between calendar year and financial year. Students, I think this is an extremely simple question, and it is a direct question, so there's nothing much to discuss. That is why I have written everything in the text, in the paper itself. So what will you write? The meaning of financial year along with section number, section 3, clause 21. It means the financial year which commences from the 1st of April. Then they also want you to write down what is the meaning of calendar year. But before that, you can also write what is a year. Okay. As per section 3, clause 66, the year is defined as whatever is mentioned, it is as reckoned in the British calendar. So according to the British calendar, the general clause also adopts that only. So the General Clauses Act says that year means a calendar year. Calendar year means beginning from 1st of January to 31st of December. And what is the difference between the financial year and calendar year? Financial year begins from 1st of April, whereas the calendar year starts from 1st of January. So that is the difference between these two. The second question from the General Clauses Act, what is the meaning of service by post? Students, I have a separate video covering only this concept, and the link you will find it over here. See, you can press the I button and it will take you directly to that video. So I'm not covering that concept because I have explained it in detail in that video. The last line, the last question relates to interpretation of statutes. At the time of interpreting statutes, what will be the effect of usage or customs and practices? Students, I think this is a very, very important question for exam. It is a very small part, but it's my gut feeling that this may be asked in the exam. Okay, so let's go with that and consider it as important for exam, and let's discuss it. I have a short and small and sweet note for it along with the Latin phrases. Now, it is not compulsory for you to remember the Latin phrase, but if you can, very good. Even if you don't write, just write the translation, just write the meaning or the interpretation of it, and that is sufficient. Now, what are usages, trade customs? They are unwritten rules, they are traditions, they are business practices which are not mentioned in the act, but they are being followed since many, many years in the line of business. So our law is actually a combination of the act, the provisions, the usages, trade customs, as well as judgment of the cases. So we hold everything and go forward. Okay, so we consider everything while deciding a case, while interpreting the law. We also give a lot of consideration to these unwritten rules, trade customs, usages. So a lot of importance is given to them. So let us go through the notes only. I will not show you the model answer. That is a little confusing. It is a little difficult to remember, but this is an extremely lucid, extremely simple note which I have written, and it is sufficient for exam. Usage trade customs, they are the best interpreters of law because it is how people have understood and interpreted law and adopted that in their trade practices. The Latin phrases are also explained there. I have mentioned them in the note, but then the translation is given. You can write that also. So, the best interpreter of law, the Latin phrase is given to you. The best way to interpret a document is to read it as it would have been read when made. Now, what are these trade customs? They are unwritten rules which are followed since many, many years. In my line of business, this is how interest is paid. In this is the normal trade custom. This is how we do business. So, if you want to understand the law, if you want to understand these old documents, practices, go back to the time, see what economic conditions were prevalent at the time when these laws, when these usages were made. So, old statutes documents should be interpreted as they would have been at the time when they were enacted or written. What was the intention of the lawmaker at the time of making these laws, or what was the intention of the businessmen who carried on or who made these trade customs? So go back, and only then you will be able to interpret those documents and those statutes. When usage or practice receives judicial or legislative approval, it gains a lot of additional weight. Okay, so here now we are bringing that into our legislation, we are bringing that into our judicial system, and then it gains a lot of importance. We give it recognition. So, students, Latin phrase is also given to you, meaning is also explained. This is sufficient for a 3 to 4 mark question. You can pause the video and write this in your notebook. So, students, did you enjoy the lecture? Did you realize that we completed all the questions from other laws? How did you like the video? Did you like the way in which we related the question and the concept, and how to apply the concept to the question, how to identify the keywords? Is it now clear? Has law become easy for you? Do put your comments in the comment box, and you can connect with me on my WhatsApp group, on other social media handles. All the links are given, and do visit my website theorymasterslearning.com for great offers. So see you, have a good day, and before leaving, do like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to your channel Theory Masters Learning.